Hey, this is Madeline Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio.
Hi, everybody. So great seeing you all here, especially with all the stuff that's been going on with Twitter. It's like Twitter has been in the news, to say the least. Wow. But I have to say, though, I mean, this episode today, we're not really getting into the whole Elon Musk thing. But the thing is, I want everybody to keep in mind, I mean, there's been so much talk with, Elon Musk buying Twitter. I mean, first of all, it's not a done deal yet. But we're just going to have to wait and see. There's no way to know how this is all going to pan out. So I think it's best for us to just sit back, watch and see what happens. And I think over the course of time, we'll have plenty of things to talk about with it. It's just the only drawback right now is they're not going to be making any updates to any of the features with Twitter for a while. So I'm really bummed that we're not going to, because, it's been so cool that there's always something new going on with Twitter Spaces each week. And I think that's going to really slow down for now. And, so we're just going to be in a wait and see pattern for a while, a little hold pattern, like they say with the airlines, we're just going to have to hold on and wait.
I was thinking exactly the same thing earlier. I mean, in terms of kind of concrete information about, what you might do with the platform, how it might change, all of that, there really isn't that much, is there? There's a few kind of sentences that everyone's clinging to and having an opinion on and writing about. And therefore, there are tons of articles out there and opinion pieces about what might happen, what could be. But as you say, there's nothing kind of really concrete yet to know. But I think what we can be sure of is that we are in a holding pattern now with features and with what's going to happen with the platform until those decisions in the back end are made, I guess. And but rest assured, once we know more stuff, we'll definitely be talking about it here.
We do have some Twitter Spaces news to start off with. I mean, all is not totally quiet at Twitter, although this piece of news came out before the whole Elon Musk thing. But as those of you that were here with us last week, you may remember the Nest was not working, which was a total bummer. But I have to say, Suze, you and I handled it like pros. We handled it really well because, when it comes to me, whenever there's a roadblock, I will find a way around it. And when I knew that we were not going to have the Nest last week hosting this room, and we rely very heavily on the Nest in this room, that's how we can show you all the things we're talking about. So you can follow along with us. And we just put tweet after tweet in there. And you all know I've talked about how I create Twitter moments each week. I take all the tweets in the Nest before we even go live, and I create a Twitter moments. And it's just one of those features that's super cool with Twitter that is so underutilized. I think part of it is people just don't know you can do it. And the other people that do know about it just don't know how to do it. And I'm going to make some tutorials because more and more people are asking me, like, how does this work? How do you put it together? But what I do is I take all the tweets of everything we're talking about that we're going to put in the Nest in real time in this room. And before the show, I go and create Twitter moments and I put all the tweets in it in order. And I make it public so everybody can see it. And then I tweet it out later in the show. And it's just a nice way to have the ability to go back. Because I know when I'm in a room and I see stuff pop in the Nest, I might be driving or walking my dog or busy doing something. And it's like, well, I have a couple of choices. I can just real quickly tap in the Nest and bookmark or just as simple as liking a tweet. You could always go back. We can go look at our own likes. It's on our profile. If you go to your profile real quick and at the top of your tweets, you got tweets and replies, media, and likes. So you can always like tweets and go right back to that by tapping on likes and seeing all the tweets you just liked. Or what I like to do is utilize the bookmark feature, especially because I subscribe to Twitter Blue for $3 a month. And as a subscriber, instead of it being one folder of all your bookmarks, which can get chaotic, I use the bookmark feature so much that with Twitter Blue, they let you categorize your bookmarks. So I have one just for all things audio. So when Suze and I are coming up with all the things we're going to discuss, before I create the Twitter moments, I go take all the tweets we're talking about today and I put it into my bookmarks folder called All Things Audio. So I've got everything there in the order that I want it. And then I use that to go create my Twitter moments to capture all of that. And really, Twitter moments is a way for you to curate a group of tweets, whether they're your tweets, other tweets, as long as they're public tweets. You can take any tweet and just curate a whole group of tweets. Another great example of using the feature is like my Twitter chat I host every Thursday afternoon called Twitter Smarter. What we do is we just kind of take all the best tweets from the chat questions, the chat answers from the guests, and we create a Twitter Moments with that. So it's a way for people to go back and have like a brief recap of the entire chat. And I've seen people use it like when they go to conferences and events and kind of like, here's what people are talking about. And they'll just take a bunch of tweets from the event and make a Twitter Moments. So many uses. I know people that have taken testimonial tweets, like when people tweet and say nice things, they create a Twitter Moments as a way to capture it all and keep it in one place. And if you just keep it in a draft mode and don't make it public, then there's a way for you to keep it for your eyes only, but then you can make it public if it's something you want to share. But since I have the ability to categorize my bookmarks, when people say nice things about me in their tweets, I just have a bookmark set up called testimonials, and I put them in there so I can easily go there to see them all. But before that categorized bookmarks feature, I had a Twitter Moments that I just kept private. I just kept it in a draft. I didn't publish it. And I would just store them there so I could always go back and see all the nice things people say. So when I see the roadblock, I just find a way around. So Twitter Moments has been a great way, especially last week, Suze, when everybody was freaking out last week and they couldn't use the Nest feature. We had it all under control. We just told everybody, hey, go to this tweet here with Twitter Moments and you can see everything that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think not having the Nest made us realise how much we use it, though, and what a great feature it really is for Spaces. So it was a real kind of loss. There was a bit of a kind of moment where you're like, oh, actually, that does really bring us all together, whether you're a speaker, whether you're a listener. It kind of gels what we're talking about, certainly the way that we use it in this space. I think it's great that there are other features on the platform that we can make use of to make sure we don't miss out in that situation. But I'm sure there were a lot of spaces that really did miss that Nest and didn't have kind of another way of creating, like adding those links that they would have used within their spaces in real time. I also love the fact that we're still calling it the Nest, and Spaces in this tweet are trying desperately to call it the Jumbotron. Which it's just not going to happen now, I don't think,
No, that's an odd name. When I saw that in the tweet, and the tweet's in the Nest, by the way, and for our podcast listeners, it's in the show notes, I thought they kind of said that as a joke. So you think they're really wanting us to start calling it Jumbotron? Because I've seen people, and I've seen some of our colleagues, they kind of joke and call it that. And I just never really took that seriously, as the Nest just fits. I just think that's just been the best word. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think there's another tweet that we're about to talk about in a minute that came from Spaces, and Spaces refer to it as Jumbotron again in there, and someone picks them up on it. So it's quite funny. I mean, I'm not sure Nest is really the right word, and I know when it was first kind of called the Nest, both of us kind of went, "Oh, really? Is it really going to be the Nest?" I'm not sure I like that, but it's just kind of become what we call it now. So
we got used to it. That was the thing. Like, I know at first we're kind of like, what? But yeah, because, when things are new, people kind of come up with their own terminology. It reminds me back in the early days of hashtags with events. For me, being on Twitter for so long and being a big fan of hashtags, I can remember like 10, 15 years ago, you go to an event and people just made up their own hashtags for the events because the events themselves didn't realize the power of hashtags yet, didn't realize they should pick one hashtag, announce it, say, this is the official hashtag, please use just this one. Instead, I'd go to an event and there'd be like 10 different hashtags. And you have to go check them all to really see everything people were talking about. You couldn't rely on just one. It was just a lot of word of mouth and people just coming up with names. So at the beginning with the Nest, there were some different names thrown around. Also, don't forget, we had the Fleets bar, right? and which I think Twitter named it. I don't think anybody came up with that, but Twitter. But then once it was gone and it was just Spaces, I remember people were coming up with some interesting names. They didn't want to call it Fleet's Bar because Fleet's was gone. But then Twitter was like, we're calling it the Space Bar. And I remember the first time I heard that, I'm like, Space Bar? That's a little hokey, but
I mean, and I think we're kind of, it's whether or not, are we going bird related because of the little Twitter icon, in which case Nest kind of fits, or are we going kind of techie, in which case Spacebar, it's quite a good play if you're on your desktop, but doesn't really work on your mobile. And oh my goodness, I mean, there's just all manner of things, isn't there, for kind of trying to work out what to call things. It's it's someone's full-time job, I'm sure. But yeah, very, very glad to have the Nest /Jumbotron / whatever you might call pinning your tweets to a space back.
Yeah, I'm so happy it's back, and just it makes life easier for sure, especially with this room, because there's so many things we want to share. I think it really helps with the flow of the room. So we're so glad it's back, and we can just put our tweets in the Nest. I still have my Twitter moments I put together of all the tweets, and I'll share it a little bit later in the show here. So you all, but plus, you can always go to my feed at any time. And if you're not familiar with this, if someone uses Twitter Moments and they have it public, you can always go view it. All you have to do is go to someone's profile. You would just go to my profile, click on the 3 dots at the top right, and you'll see View Moments. And if anyone is using Twitter Moments, that's how you find it, is in that spot. So if you go to mine, you're going to see all the ones I've created each week for this room, for all things audio, plus the different ones we have for my Twitter Smarter Chat. And I have some other just odds and ends of moments I've done over the years. You probably have to scroll pretty far to find them, but it's just a great feature. I'm just a big fan of it. So, and I think this is a good example. If you're hosting rooms in Twitter Spaces, you're using the Nest, I think it's really smart to curate them all together into one place, which is Twitter Moments, and share that with your community.
Right. So we're now going to return to something we were talking about last week, Madeline. There was a space that was spun up where the former Prime Minister of Pakistan was speaking, and there were a lot of listeners over there. I mean, it was happening pretty much simultaneously with All Things Audio last week, and there were an awful lot of listeners. Those listeners and the replay on that particular space have gone up and up and up. And Morgan actually tweeted out to show kind of the latest figures on it. So 5 days after this space had hundreds of thousands of people in it, it now has 1.2 million that have tuned in. I mean, that's a hefty number.
That's amazing. I mean, I don't think I've seen a number that high with Twitter Spaces before until I saw this screenshot from Morgan. I'm blown away.
Yeah, me too. I think, that is a huge number. We discussed a little bit about what might have led to such a massive number of people joining that space. It had a number of high profile people in politics over there that all had the mic. So they were all speakers. They were all kind of shown as speakers. They all had quite high follower numbers. I think, at the time that we were talking about it last week, we were looking at sort of 161,000 were listening live. They were kind of the figures that we were getting at the time. So it just kind of goes to show that those replays do extend the life of that content, and do mean that even more people do hear the content from Spaces, which is really interesting. I think one of the things that really piqued my interest that me and Morgan were chatting about during the week was that essentially they picked up a high percentage of those extra listens kind of in the next 24 hours after the space had happened. And then it really kind of plateaued. I mean, I've certainly not been involved in a space that has had anywhere near as many listeners as that one. But the one space that I have been involved in that has had a higher number of people listen, that replay equally had kind of a half-life, if you like the next day you saw that reach kind of really grow again. And then, yes, we added kind of a few 100, I guess, over the following 5 days. But it was nothing like that initial surge where we hit over 1,000, and that felt really good. So yeah, but really interesting to just see those numbers. And again, we kind of talked about the black box of the algorithm and how you can get more people into your space and all of those kind of things last week. So you can definitely go and check out episode 44 of the All Things Audio podcast and hear what we were saying then. But yeah, just as an update, 1.2 million. I mean, what an amazing number.
It is amazing. It's amazing to me that they had 445,000 live listeners, which we just were so blown away by to begin with. But then to have so many more that listen to the recording, it really shows the power of recording your rooms. I've had the ability to record for a long time because, they gave it to the early beta host to test first. And I just felt like all 3 rooms that I co-host each week should be recorded. Even though it's only there for 30 days, I feel like, not everybody can make it live. There are plenty of times I see rooms that look amazing to me, but I can't be there live. Just like right now, in a few minutes, Twitter Spaces is hosting a room that we can't be at because it's going to be live in a few minutes. And Morgan was like tweeting them like, I hope you guys are recording this. I know Susan and I were like jumping on that tweet going, yes, please record this because I'd like to go listen to it later when I have the chance. Seems like Twitter Spaces is always hosting rooms. I'm surprised they're doing it today on a Wednesday. They always do it on Thursdays in the late afternoon when I'm hosting my Twitter Smarter Spaces. And it just drives me crazy. But because they always record them, I can always go back and listen. So I always appreciate hosts that do record their rooms. And this tweet right here that Morgan pointed out really shows the power of that replay listenership. I mean, way more people listen to the replay.
And there was another one actually today. And again, it was, around Pakistan politics. They'd actually had 24,000 people that had set reminders for that particular space. It did go live earlier on. And when I first logged on, probably over an hour ago now, I could see that there are about 6,000 live listeners actually in there. And within about 20 minutes that had gone down by 1,000. So, but yeah, to know how many people had set a reminder for that, 24,000. The other kind of element to this, which is kind of that underbelly of Twitter, is that I did see a few articles talking about this particular space because it got, got such huge numbers. It did attract a lot of attention. But some people kind of saying, there's a lot of bots involved here. There's a lot of kind of not true listeners, not true followers of, some of the people potentially might not have had completely engaged followings, all of that kind of thing. I mean, I just find the whole thing super interesting. How that grows. Obviously, as creators, it's one of those first questions people ask me. Twitter Spaces looks really great. Why should I do it? And how do I get people in? People don't want to make content for no one. You want to make content that is going to be heard. And, picking away at it bit by bit, trying to understand it when something really does go viral like that is kind of one of the ways, I guess, that you can try and learn and work some stuff out, I guess. I've enjoyed the brain twister of it anyway.
Right. And, with Twitter Spaces, we're about 15 or 16 months into it. And we're really starting to see these larger rooms. We're starting to see higher profile rooms more than ever. This tweet I'm going to share right now I thought was really interesting. Michael Sterling, who happens to be here in the room live with us, put this tweet out yesterday showing the NFL, was promoting, here's a big brand promoting this Twitter Spaces they were going to be holding. It's already passed. And when you click on, there's a link, a set reminder link in the NFL part of the tweet, and you can actually play the recording. It was recorded, and they've had over 11,000 people tune in. So I think that's going to be the trend we're going to start seeing now is more and more bigger brands. I'm seeing lots more journalists and big media companies doing spaces. And it seems like those are the ones that get a lot of attention and get a lot of people listening because it's usually things that a lot of people are very interested in hearing about.
Yeah, I mean, today there's even a YouTube one going on. So Morgan actually DM'd me earlier with the link to it. YouTube Shorts community, creators in conversation here on Twitter Spaces. So there's a bit of cross-platforming going on. They're coming over here to have a chat and, things like that. There are different pockets, different communities, different brands that are kind of thinking, yeah, let's give this a go. And, certainly when you can get numbers like the NFL you've just said there, it's definitely worth doing. What I'm amused at by looking at the NFL tweet is that they've done a set reminder and used the URL. They're not using the Twitter Spaces card, and I don't blame them. I mean, forever we have been saying how ugly the card is. They've got a lovely graphic that shows the people that will be speaking, clearly states what time, who those people are. That is way nicer than the card you're going to get off the back of the URL. So good on them for kind of adding the URL in, but using a different image. From way back when, Andrew Lyons has been trying to show us all how to change the card and make it more our own and brand it more. And I think these bigger brands, they're not going to settle for a plain kind of card with a funny button on it. I think Twitter need to get smarter about working out what that really looks like for people.
I totally agree. And that's such a good point you're bringing up. Having this nice graphic. Listen, I've been doing digital marketing since 1996. I'm old school OG when it comes to digital marketing. I was building websites before most people had even heard of .com in the 90s. And this right here is the power of marketing. An image like this says so much more than a plain purple card with text on it. So I really hope that Twitter, because Twitter has mentioned, it's been a while, but they've mentioned in the past that they were going to give us the ability to do some graphics and promote this better in a way where it's just more visually appealing. But I guess it got put on the back burner. I guess it just wasn't as important. But as a marketer, visual is so important. I love how the NFL promoted this with a beautiful graphic, putting the link in, set a reminder. And I do that many times. I rely on the purple card because people are used to it. They see it and they know exactly what it is. But I also try to put out tweets as well with a graphic, like for this room. I do a little bit of both. I do a mix. I'll do just the purple card. But then I'll say, I just make sure every time I use a JPEG of you and me, Suze, or any of my other rooms and use a JPEG, I make sure it ends with something like set a reminder, and then I put the link. So I make it super obvious and easy for someone to know where to click. Because if you click on the image, it's just going to bring up the image bigger. What Andrew has taught us with using the Twitter ads platform is there is a way you can create a Twitter card with the image and embed the Twitter Spaces room so that when you click on the image, it does open up the Twitter card and opens up, if the room is live or the replay or to just schedule and set the reminder. So I'm waiting for the day when Twitter incorporates this into what Andrew has been showing us, where we can easily have a Twitter card with an image that we want to promote the room, and it automatically embeds that link to the room and takes you right to it. So fingers crossed that I know things are going to be delayed for a while with Twitter. That's what we've been told. They're not going to do anything new for a while. But hopefully when things pick back up with Spaces and they're working on new things, I hope that's something we're going to see real soon.
Yeah, me too. So this one from Twitter Spaces. What are the unspoken rules of Spaces etiquette? This was tweeted out by the @Twitter Spaces account on April the 22nd. And it has received a lot of replies, and I've loved looking through them all, Madeline. Have you got some favourites?
Oh, yeah. This is just a great little tip for everyone. I mean, you and I know this, and we do this, but when you see tweets like this, especially from a high profile like Twitter Spaces, go read the comments. I love when they ask questions or just say something like this, like, what are unspoken rules of Spaces etiquette? It's all about just reading everybody's 2 cents on this and what things they're saying, because you're getting so many different opinions. And I really like Sajad's. I don't know if he's here with us. I don't see him. But he has a really great response talking about, greeting entire spacers, acknowledging the listeners, leveraging the speakers, listening to the conversation, understanding the discussion, giving others a chance first, responding to the dialogue. And then he ends it with, every word counts, and those who are behind accounts are humans too. I love that. That was like so well said.
Yeah, I thought that was really well put together. And I think it's the tweet that's got the most likes on here. It kind of comes up as the sort of top of the thread, if you like. I think he's covered all bases there. And it is really great. I mean, it's lovely to see that a lot of these responses are kind of saying, it's about respect. It's about muting your mic when you're not speaking. Some have said, it's about being a good host and not being afraid to mute someone or, to cut people off if they're kind of going off on their own tangent and going off topic. Lots of people saying it's about reading the room. So, seeing if lots of people are responding and wanting to talk about what you're talking about or not, if you're just talking to yourself. How many listeners have you got? Have lots of listeners just suddenly left? You need to change what you're talking about or, introduce some more speakers up. All of those kind of things. I mean, hosting is not a simple, straightforward thing. I've got to say, we've said it before. I feel like you need to be an octopus to be able to host a space, to be honest. I definitely wouldn't like to try and do it on my own. And I'm very grateful for Madeline to be the co-host each week. And, there's a lot to think about and to hold in your head. If it was just about kind of screening the listeners or screening the people that are requesting the mic and then kind of having the conversation with that person and facilitating, then great. But you kind of, as the host, you're a facilitator, but you are also trying to make sure you've put all the right things in the nest and, reading the room, all of that kind of thing. And if you're trying to hold all of that in your head just by yourself, it's a lot of work, don't you think?
Oh my gosh, totally. Yes. My first room, Twitter Smarter, which made sense for those that don't know. I've been hosting a Twitter chat called Twitter Smarter since 2015. I also have a podcast called Twitter Smarter. And when I started hosting rooms and spaces, the first one I wanted to do was for my Twitter Smarter community. So what I do is we have the Twitter chat itself, which is very different from spaces. And I know the people that aren't familiar with Twitter chats, but they're familiar with spaces, get a little confused when they see me promoting it. So I try to make sure they understand that they're two separate conversations. So every Thursday at 1:00 Eastern is a Twitter chat. Twitter chats have been going on for many years. I've been hosting them weekly for 11 years now, a variety of Twitter chats. But basically, it is live tweeting with a hashtag. That's all it is. So if you come to Twitter, and you can use TweetDeck, you can use Hootsuite, you can use any third-party tool that you like to use when you're tweeting. It's got to be a platform where you can put out tweets and read tweets. I use TweetDeck. It works really well, but you can go into twitter.com. It's hard to do it on mobile, I will say. This chat moves very fast, so it's hard to keep up in mobile. But all you do is you put in the hashtag Twitter Smarter, pound Twitter Smarter, one word, and you just watch the craziness unfold. It's a lot of tweets because it's a very large conversation. And it's a discussion through tweets, through live tweeting. And then what we do is later in the day, we take a break. We come back later at 5:00 Eastern on Thursday, and I bring the guests back. And now we move it to spaces for what I call the after chat. So it's like part 2. We continue the discussion, but now we can talk and we can bring on listeners that want to ask questions or share their comments and their thoughts on the topic. And it just makes for a really fun conversation. It works out really well like that. So very quickly, I realized I needed a co-host. I was doing it by myself, and it was very hard. And so I enlisted a co-host for that. And then this room was the second one I wanted to do. I came to you and said, Suze, we ought to start a we where we talk about all the latest with social audio. And you and I have just been such great collaborators with this. This has been so much fun. We just celebrated 1 year of hosting this room every week. So woohoo to us for making it a whole year every week. And we can plan to just keep continuing on. But it's so great having the co-host because we can, split the duties and you don't ever feel like you have to do it all. Like you've got someone working with you. And it really makes a difference. And then the third room that I co-host is called Twitter Audits. It was just an experiment that went really, really well. And I just picked a Saturday afternoon and I wanted to bring people together to review profiles and let me help you make your Twitter profile better. So I call it Twitter Audits because we're going to audit your profile. And there's not a lot of prep involved and I'm not really putting much in the nest. So I didn't think I needed a co-host, but pretty quickly, I was still overwhelmed. It's still a lot. Even if you're not using the Nest and you're just talking, it is nice to have a second person. So I enlisted my friend Dariana Lozano because when it comes to Twitter marketing, she is one of the smartest people I know, and she's one of the very few people that have been doing Twitter marketing as long as I have and knows as much as I do. And so she's just been a great collaborator for that. And then I see George Silverman's here. He's awesome. And he was just one of our regulars that came every week, and he always wanted to chime in and share his thoughts. So eventually I said, hey, and he always had a great point of view that was very different from Dariana and I. So I asked him, I said, would you like to, be one of our co-hosts and do this with us each week? He was like, sure. So he's become, our additional co-host. And then his friend, Ron Richards, was becoming a regular as well. So he just kept coming week after week and sharing his great insights. So we added him as well. So I went from something where I had an idea for a room. It was an experiment. I gave it a try by myself, loved it, and then just started adding others. You don't have to have it all figured out when you start. You can just start something and then let it build off of it. And it's been such a great story to tell because it just kept building and building. And we just celebrated 1 year of that room last week. So super excited that all 3 rooms that I co-host in Spaces, all of them have reached a year.
I mean, that is incredible, Madeline. That needs a moment of everybody. I think we need to hit the round of applause emoji for Madeline. I mean, 3 rooms, a whole year. I think that's, it's hefty work.
I love it. I love Spaces. I think this is such a great feature in Twitter. I did get on Clubhouse early on and loved it. I just didn't like the quality of the audio. At first it didn't sound very good. And I was thinking, just like everybody else, oh gosh, here's another app. I have to start at 0. Nobody knows who I am over here. It's frustrating. And I knew Twitter was working on Spaces, and I thought, it's going to be so much better because you already have a built-in community. If you've been using Twitter like I have.
I kind of feel the same. Like, I like to listen in to different rooms over on Clubhouse, but I don't know where my tribe is over there. I can't find my people.
Exactly. I feel the same way. And you know what's funny about that? So I was also going to talk about how before social audio, what was big? Live streaming video. And I was all over that early on. I mean, I was live streaming at music events back in 2010. I kid you not. The technology wasn't great, but that didn't stop me. I knew how to do it. So I was doing it and I had a blast doing it. But, it's working with the technology we have. And I really like live streaming. But live streaming, live video is, I think the reason why this audio, Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, and now these others that have come out is so popular is because you don't have to be camera ready. You would be surprised how many people are held back from live streaming because they're not comfortable on camera, or they just don't ever want to go get camera ready. For us women, like having your hair fixed up and makeup on. I mean, I've been trying to get women to do live streaming with me since I remember when Google Plus Hangouts came out in 2010 or 11. And I was all over that. And I was running a large women's music community for women. I could not get any of them to come on live stream with me and just hang out in Google Plus Hangouts. They're like, well, I got to go fix my hair first. I don't know if I want to do, who's going to see me? It was just so much pushback. Social audio is amazing because nobody sees us. They're just listening to us. And I remember one of the very first rooms I was in Clubhouse, I'll never forget. It was like a huge room, bunch of speakers. This one lady's just talking away. And she goes, by the way, I'm in my bathtub right now. And I just laughed because I thought, this is the power of social audio. She didn't have to tell us that, but we can do stuff like that. We can be in the bathtub while we're talking to people all around the world with just our voice. We can be walking our dog, which I would do many times when I first got on Clubhouse and then Twitter Spaces. I just fell in love with it that I would just be in my car or walking my dog and going into rooms and participating because why not? Nobody's going to see me. I don't have to worry about being camera ready. They don't have to know I'm out walking my dog. I can still be part of a conversation. And I think that's really powerful, Suze, is that audio allows you, it's just about voice. So you could be, doing something and listening to a conversation or even speaking in a conversation without worrying about, do I have enough lighting? People going to be able to see my face? Do I look good today? By having a good hair day.
Yeah. I mean, there's less friction for someone who wants to be involved in creating the audio, and there's more flexibility for someone who's listening to it. So, frictionless wise, if you're the creator, you've not got to do your hair. No, all you've got to do is switch on the app or turn on your mic and record, whether you're creating a podcast, whether you're going live in Spaces or Clubhouse. And if you're listening, you don't have to be sat where there's a screen or, in a particular place. You could be in your car, you could be walking along the road, you could be making the sandwiches, getting ready for the day and still be listening. And, that's why I think that's one of the reasons why I love audio so much. This kind of passive medium that lets us do other stuff while we're listening. I love that. I think on both sides, it kind of has an easier entry point than video and than live streaming. And I think social audio has really tapped into that kind of audio creation space as well. So it's brilliant. I love it. I was waiting for this to happen for so long over here. I was sure that there was going to be a moment where, social media would meet audio in some way. I just didn't quite know how it was going to happen. And then it did. And I've not been disappointed by it at all.
I know, with you being like the true audio expert here, I'm sure you were just waiting for this to happen. And I'm so glad we finally got here into social audio. I think it was well overdue to really get going.
There were definitely some networking events where I did my whole presentation about voice technology and then started talking about social media and ended with my mic drop moment of, one day I think we will be using our voices via social media. And I'm sure there were people there that just thought, what on earth is she talking about?
Right.
But I just believed in it. And I really felt like that was the missing strand. We'd had video on our social media platforms, and I felt like this was the next step.
Suze, you came across this really interesting article about a daily Clubhouse room that's been going on since the start in Ukraine with what's going on over there, and that they've racked up over 1 million visitors. This is insane. Wow.
Yeah. 1 million is obviously the number for today's All Things Audio. We've been talking about 1 million listeners on that Pakistan politics space that went on last week. This is 1 million people listening into the Ukraine sit-rep room over on Clubhouse, which has actually been live now for more than 50 days. It averages 15,000 visitors every day with an average constant listenership of 300, this article says from bdaily.co.uk. Essentially, this is a room that has been set up by Pyotr Kurzin, who's an expat English-Russian. He's previously worked with the UN, the World Bank, Amnesty International, and it's telling people what's happening over there and, what's happening with the war, which, considering the kind of clamp down on information, the limits, the limitations over there, I'm guessing people are kind of going to Clubhouse to try and find out information. And certainly from the look of this particular article, we're talking some high-powered audience members, some influential voices joining the room. It says here, ranging from a former Deputy Secretary of State, the former First Deputy Managing Director of the IMF. They've named a few people there. Just, again, it's really interesting. This is, again, another political story. Morgan was talking about this with me previously, and it just seems like these social audio rooms are what people want in times of political turbulence almost. I guess maybe that's the point at which people want to make sure that their opinion is being heard. They need to feel like they've got a platform and outlet. But certainly for politics, both these rooms that we're talking about, whether it's Pakistan or whether it's the Ukraine and the war, there's very much, political element can't be taken away from that subject. So really interesting to see that in both cases, these have got hundreds of thousands, millions of people joining in and listening. And the subject is political, very much so.
Right. And I'm going to add this tweet in the thread. I've been following this guy, Walter Lake, since the start of the war. He is so interesting. He has been hosting Twitter Spaces rooms constantly since the war broke out. And every time I see his profile, I see the purple ring around his profile picture. He is always live with these rooms because I have a Twitter list with, several different people like himself and other organizations. So I can always have a pulse on what's going on beyond just what's going on, what they tell you with the news. And I feel like I know a lot that's happening over in Ukraine from following. And he's one of the people, and he retweets a lot of interesting tweets as well. So you really have an idea of everything going on. But he is just all over with using spaces to connect people and have discussions. And I just find this so interesting how people are using Clubhouse and Spaces for that.
Yeah, I mean, we always said, it would be really interesting to see how people use these platforms. I mean, these are the spaces and rooms that are getting the high numbers of listeners, the high number of people going there. People want to listen in. They want to find out what they can about the situation. And yeah, I mean, to have a room as well that's been kind of going continuously for 50 days. It says here it's thought to be the longest continuously running and largest attended social audio experience in history. So, yeah, I mean, just incredible for people to have spun that up and to kept it going as well at such a time.
Absolutely. So we got a couple of speakers here. First up is Welcome to the Horror Show. How are you? What's your name?
Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Ryan Joseph Murphy. I'm just listening to your guys' talk. I'm friends with Morgan in the audience here, and I'm hooked up with the social audio production company Audiotorium. I want to push back firstly a couple of things here. This article is wrong. The meditation room in Clubhouse, which is run by Audiotorium, has been running for almost 9 months. We have almost 300,000 people come through that room. That is the longest social audio room ever.
Wow, that's amazing. Tell us more about the room. Tell us about it.
It was started up. My buddy Min started up the meditation club, and there's a sound spa room that effectively plays meditation music, and it's been running for now I think it's been about 9 months. It might be 7 or 8, but every single day there's different people playing music effectively, mods that take control over that. But yeah, about 275,000 have come through right now. But that is the longest social audio room. So just want to push back against that article a little bit. 50 days is good. 50 days is good. So.
But that there's longer running. But again, it's another use case, isn't it? So, we're talking politics there. The other use case being this kind of mindfulness, meditation and music. And certainly Clubhouse has cornered the market in terms of trying to really grab the sound, like the sound quality, the spatial audio, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not surprised to hear that it's a room that is broadcasting kind of music and that kind of content. Really interesting. Thanks so much for coming up and talking to us about it.
Hey, no worries, Susan.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you being here with us and sharing your insights. And George is here. Hey, George.
Hey, how are you? That was wonderful to hear from Ryan. That was terrific.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify the Jumbotron thing.
Sure.
It's a lot of fun. A lot of us older people remember the invention of the Jumbotron. It was in 1985 or so, in the mid-'80s. Sony and Mitsubishi came out with these big, gigantic panels that they put in sports events and concerts and other kinds of things, and they appeared in Times Square. And it was the first time you could actually get pictures. You get kind of television-looking pictures actually on a gigantic billboard, and it literally stopped traffic in Times Square, and people went crazy over it. And so this whole use of I was one of the first people to be using Jumbotron on Spaces. I don't think I invented it. I don't know who started it, but a bunch of us started using it right in the beginning, in the early days of Spaces, and we just thought it was a very funny joke because it was calling the Nest the Jumbotron was just such a wild, insane exaggeration that was the humor of it. I mean, it is so totally not a Jumbotron.
Right.
And that was what made it funny. And so a bunch of us just kept saying Jumbotron with a chuckle. But then some people took it seriously.
Yeah. And now Twitter Spaces is taking it seriously because they refer to it as that every chance they get now, I've noticed in their tweets.
Can I call it that officially, do you think?
Well, I've seen other tweets where they're calling it that.
That's hilarious. Because the whole thing was a joke. I'm sure nobody meant that seriously. All of us were joking about it.
Well, that's what I thought too, but they keep using that terminology, so I don't know. It is funny, yeah.
May I jump in on the Jumbotron briefly?
Hey, sure. Hey, Dr. M, always great seeing you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to make a quick comment on the Jumbotron. Folks, dearest social audio community, this is a bird app. This is Twitter. We are birds. And so please, it's the Nest. The Nest makes all the sense in the world. It's there's nothing jumbo about it, and there's nothing Tron about it. So please, a personal plea without any reason or ration from Dr. M to you. Let's forget entirely Jumbotron and call it the Nest. It's so nice. Nest is home. Nest feels good. And this is Twitter, and we are birds. Thank you, guys.
So what we're saying really is that the Nest is, it's all just a mumbo jumbotron, really.
That's right.
Love it. The mumbo jumbotron. I love it.
Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.